By now, you might have already seen or heard the headlines that, oh, laptops are getting mobile phone processors now, or this laptop is powered by phone parts, sensationalized as either a praise for how powerful phones have become, or critically as if laptop manufacturers are shortchanging their customers. While the idea is not entirely new, in fact it had been tried before in 2 separate laptop generations, Windows and its hardware partners like ASUS here have unanimously decided to take the leap into producing ARM-based Windows laptop devices again this 2024. And now I've got one of the flagships here. This is the ASUS Vivobook S15, part of the new generation of ARM-based laptops for Windows, and it's running the new Qualcomm Snapdragon X Elite SoC. And since it has a dedicated NPU, a powerful one at that, Windows has designated this to be one of their Copilot Plus PCs for this generation. So in this video, we're going to take a closer look at the ASUS Vivobook S15, and we're here to see if third time is really the charm for Windows on ARM. As with all my reviews, we start at the outside. The ASUS Vivobook S15 is a thin and light 15-inch laptop sporting an all-aluminum minimalist chassis with a smooth, finely sandblasted finish. It weighs in at an easy-to-carry 1.42 kilograms and measures 35.3 centimeters wide, 22.7 centimeters deep, and is only 1.47 centimeters at its thinnest point. It also has a 2-point lay-flat hinge, which has minimal screen wobble. One big thing to note here is that it's rated for mil-standard 810H, which means it offers military-grade protection, which is always nice for any device. There's nothing about the build that would suggest that ASUS isn't fully invested into this laptop line. It can definitely tussle with the best within its price range, and it still has room for some upgrades in the future. Good job, ASUS. Moving on to the keyboard, it's got a numpad. Hell yeah! I love seeing full keyboards on medium-sized laptops. It is backlit too, but it's pretty dim. It's RGB as well, but only single zone. You'd only notice it when typing in the dark. The keyboard features the new dedicated Copilot button too. It's great, I guess. I regularly use it, but I wish that it opened the Copilot sidebar instead of intrusively opening a new window. But I guess that's Copilot's fault, not the laptop's. Heading on down to the touchpad, it's large and nice and responds well to multi-touch. Plus, it has this little feature where you can shake the pointer to have a little spotlight show up on it. The touchpad also has additional controls that I haven't seen before in other ASUS laptops. The left side scroll is volume control, top scroll is seek for media or typing, swipe in from the top right corner is for screen expert, and the right side scroll is for screen brightness. These are great and wholly welcome. I just wish we can remap these gestures. That would be super useful. These quick controls are great. They're so great, in fact, that I now want them on all laptops. Not just ASUS laptops, mind you. Every laptop out there, it should have these controls. It's really good. Alright, let's head on over to a big selling point of this laptop, the ports. The right side is pretty straightforward with just 2 USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A ports for all your peripheral and hard drive connections. Then the left side has a unified 3.5mm port, micro SD card reader, then 2 USB 4.0 Gen 3 Type-C with support for DisplayPort out and power delivery up to 100 watts, and an HDMI 2.1 TMDS port. Take note of that, since it's not an FRL or fixed-rate link, it's not going to be able to use the full feature set of HDMI 2.1 when breaking out to high-resolution or high-refresh rate displays. I think this is more of a limitation of the Adreno GPU than an active decision on ASUS side. I love the ports on these, save for that micro SD card, of course. You know me, I always prefer full-size SD cards, but those 2 USB 4 ports are really good to see. While I don't think that this is going to be compatible with external GPUs, which usually use USB 4, USB 4 on this is still really great because it future-proofs the product. I mean, more would be better, especially if you take into account that out of those 2 USB 4 ports, one is kind of reserved for the charger. So you're functionally left with just one USB 4 port. But still, this is a port selection that is entirely unexpected for a laptop of this size and thickness. Heading on over to the vents, we kind of have to set some expectations for this. Since it's not a high-performance laptop, extensive and expansive vents are not necessarily required. But as we can see, we have a big array here at the bottom, with around 75% of the back being taken up by a big exhaust vent. I hazard that what's here is probably more than enough for its expected power draw. Moving on over to the webcam, it looks like this. It's pretty good for use cases of this laptop, and it's quite capable not only in image quality, but also how it handles lights. Definitely usable for Zoom calls for work or school, and even some light content creation. It's even got an IR depth sensor, so it supports not only Windows Hello facial recognition login, but also background blur and image effects through Windows Studio Effects. One last thing, it has a privacy shutter, but it's not a hardware disconnect. So the mic still works even though you've engaged the shutter. But that's alright. This would have been better if it was a hardware disconnect though. Heading on over to one of the big purchase reasons for this laptop, the screen. It's got an impressive 15.6-inch 16:9 2880 by 1620 OLED display that has a 0.2 millisecond response time, 600 nits of peak brightness and HDR, and supports 100% of the DCI-P3 color gamut. And by God, it's a beauty. While I can't verify if it's pre-configured out of the box, images and video pop out of the screen in a way only OLED displays can do. Resolution is large enough for high detail viewing, but not too heavy to not be ran by that Qualcomm Adreno GPU. But still, I've got two notes for it. First is that the gloss finish feels a bit uneven and flimsy. Like, this isn't glass, this is plastic. This is very obviously plastic. Second, it's not a touchscreen, which I feel should be a requirement if you're going to be making a medium-tier productivity laptop that has an OLED screen. I should know because my on-the-go slim and light is still the ASUS ZenBook 14X OLED Space Edition. If not for the fact that it's connected to a fairly sane mid-power laptop, this screen would absolutely kill it in a gaming laptop. I mean, it's got the performance for it. So yeah, ASUS, just port this over to a tough model or a lower-end ROG model and we're good. Finally, rounding out our external features and contributing to the media viewing experience are the speakers. And they sound okay. It says here sound by Harman Kardon and it's got the Dolby Atmos logo screen printed on the body. And those do nothing. They sound mid at best. Yeah, this might be served better if you transplanted the speakers from the great-sounding ZenBook 14 line to this. Alright, time to take a peek inside and see what makes this laptop tick. The variant of the ASUS Vivobook S15 with me is running the Snapdragon X-Elite X1E 78100 with 42MB of cache, running at 3.4 GHz with 12 cores and 12 threads. Yeah, no hyper-threading for this. It incorporates the Qualcomm Hexagon NPU that is rated for a maximum of 45 TOPS or trillions of operations per second, a performance metric that we will explore later on in this video. And further attached to the chip is the Qualcomm Adreno 741 GPU that is preset to use 7GB of shared memory. Take note that this is an entire SoC. It doesn't have dedicated VRAM, it just shares system memory, which is why it benefits greatly from more and faster RAM. And speaking of RAM, it has 16 gigs of LPDDR5X RAM running at 8448 MHz. That's blazing fast, but as we'll see here in the teardown, it's non-expandable, so that's all you get. As for cooling, we can see that this is outfitted with ASUS iCool Thermal Tech, which has two heat pipes leading to two ice blade fans, leading to the large exhaust vent at the back. It also does support 0 decibel ambient cooling at its lowest power state, meaning that the fans won't even spin. Alright. Another thing to note here is the fixed Wi-Fi 7 chip and only one M.2 PCIe port, so you're going to clone your drive if you want to upgrade in the future. Last thing we can see here is my favorite component as well, the 70 watt-hour battery. But I'll tell you all about it later. Alright, this is a fairly special section for this review since I don't usually tackle this on other laptops. But since this is marketed as a Copilot Plus PC with enhanced AI performance over other laptops, we have to look at the experience of using AI on this. Of course, Copilot first. I constantly use Copilot for ideation and script cleanup processes, and I can say that the experience is pretty snappy. Although I'm not entirely sure if it's because of the Snapdragon X Elite processor or if it's because my internet is relatively fast. But either way, I experienced no problems with using Copilot. Again, I just prefer it to start as a sidebar and not as a separate window when I press the Copilot button. Next feature is live captions, and in my experience, it's a bit slow. Look here on the music video I'm playing. It takes a while to translate the Japanese dialogue and lyrics, with the live captions appearing roughly 2 bars late. I'm hoping this improves in the future. Cocreator is a great big miss for Paint. While you are going to get some pretty nice renders when you draw basic stuff, once you start adding some complexity to the drawings, it starts to daydream, like really hard. It might need some more training for it to be enjoyable, much less useful. ASR is a fairly usable feature that we'll see later in the gaming section. It does function similar to NVIDIA DLSS and AMD FSR, and allowed me to play some games on the Vivobook S15. But yeah, we'll be tackling that later. And lastly, for software, I want to talk about the compatibility of programs of Windows on ARM. While regular everyday pedestrian software like Google Chrome or Spotify or even Steam run natively on ARM, some more specialized and heavier software mostly rely on either having a dedicated version made specifically for ARM, or most of the time it'll be run emulated, which usually results in either bad or unstable performance. Since I'm a creative professional, I tried installing my Adobe suite on this, and the most that I was able to get in was Photoshop and Lightroom, which runs natively on ARM. But Premiere Pro, my most used creative app, runs emulated. And let me tell you, the Premiere Pro experience on this was pretty painful, to be totally honest. It had trouble loading up my files and keeping up with playback. But Photoshop and Lightroom was pretty fine though, it was pretty snappy. Before anything else, I am a creative professional first, and not having access to the full suite of Adobe programs, it's really a bummer. And having no access to my preferred offline and online editor of choice really limits the real-world capabilities of this laptop. But then again, Windows ARM support for those programs isn't up to ASUS. It's with Adobe and Windows, so I'm hoping there will be better support for it in the future. But as it stands now, if you are an Adobe creative and you want this laptop, you might want to explore and learn alternatives for your programs. I hear DaVinci works really well on ARM, as well as Canva. Alright, time for some numbers on the screen. Do note that due to the limited availability of programs, much less benchmarking options on Windows on ARM, my testing suite is not as expansive as my regular x86 one. Also, keep in mind that these performance tests were done with the Vivobook S15 plugged into its 90-watt USB-C power delivery brick and with the power settings set to performance. Alright, starting with synthetic benchmarks, we have Cinebench R23. One thing that I noticed here is that Cinebench R23 doesn't fully recognize the Snapdragon X Elite. It just shows up as a virtual CPU. I guess this might be a case of Cinebench being built primarily on the x86 platform, and as such is running on an emulation layer. But still, we are taking this as a representation of emulation performance. The Snapdragon X Elite was able to score 9,224 points in multi-core and 1,105 points in single-core. Emulated or not, the multi-core score is very impressive. Moving on over to something that I know is not running emulated is Geekbench AI. Remember, I was only able to start implementing this into my laptop reviews in my last one, in my ROG Zephyrus G16 review. And just to have a frame of reference, the G16 with its Intel Core Ultra 9 185H was able to score 2,754 points in single precision, 691 points in half precision, and 3,470 points in quantized tests. Now here with the Snapdragon X Elite with its AI-dedicated Qualcomm Hexagon NPU, it was able to score 1,790 points in single precision, 10,925 points in half precision, and 21,073 points in quantized. This raises a lot of questions, especially about why the Core Ultra 9 was able to outperform the Snapdragon X Elite by double in single precision, but the Snapdragon X Elite absolutely crushes the Core Ultra 9 in half precision and quantized. I'll have to look into this much more, and I'll probably present my findings in a future video. Alright, gaming time. I was able to consult the website worksonwoa.com/games regarding games that I can install and benchmark on the ASUS Vivobook S15 just to understand its gaming performance. But I took kind of a weird approach here. I already know that it's going to perform really well on games that were originally designed to work on phones, because at the end of the day, that's what the Snapdragon X Elite is, a super-powered phone chipset. So apart from Genshin Impact, I tried to focus on getting AAA titles to work on the Vivobook S15, and here are my findings. Starting off with the obvious and the favorite, we have Genshin Impact at max settings running at a steady 60 FPS on the Vivobook S15. As we can see here in the following examples, I keep running into a limitation or bug on my laptop unit that many games, or practically all of them, refuse to run at full screen. Yes, I tried command line prompts and the ever-powerful Alt plus Enter, but I don't know, there's kind of like a bug with my unit. But anyways, it was not to be. Genshin Impact is limited to a maximum of 60 FPS even on the PC version, so that's basically our performance ceiling here. But I was able to observe a 1% low of 47 FPS during heavy fight scenarios. Next up, we have an old title, but still AAA nonetheless, Fallout 4. Aside from the same issue that I encountered where it just refuses to run at full screen and the game being limited to just 60 FPS, this game ran surprisingly great at max settings. And similar to Genshin Impact, I was able to record a 1% low of just 44 FPS during heavy gunfights and vertibird scenes. As someone who played Fallout 4 on day one and ran a PC that struggled to play it at the time, this honestly surprised me. Also, this title ran with native support for Auto Super Resolution, which would explain the great performance. Next up, we have Minecraft Java Edition. And I don't know, man, you would think that a laptop that could run Fallout 4 at good frame rates at max settings would have zero problems running Minecraft. But that isn't the case here. As you can see, it was stuttering all over, and it had the frustrating habit of crashing constantly. I recorded DNF on this since I wasn't able to record any significant performance out of my testing. And lastly, we have Borderlands 3, a AAA title on worksonwoa.com/games that is classified as playable and even supports Auto Super Resolution. But no matter what I tried, it wasn't able to recognize any display resolution beyond 720p, and it just straight up crashes whenever I try to get into the game or run the benchmark tool. So yeah, this gets two big DNFs here as well. For me, this paints the clearest picture in terms of performance. Not just for the ASUS Vivobook S15, but for Windows on ARM at large. In regular everyday programs and even in AI apps, it is very fast, very responsive, and very reliable. But as soon as you start to try and game on it, unless the game is specifically made for ARM, you're going to have a bad time. I sincerely hope that gaming on Windows on ARM improves over time, because this is kind of unacceptable. I mean, if not through native development, at least through better emulation. Alright, heading on over to battery and charging, ASUS claims that the Vivobook S15 will last up to 18 plus hours on battery and will fast charge its battery up to 60% via USB-C in just 49 minutes. Now, in my use case, I was able to squeeze out 12 hours and 49 minutes on casual use, which involves work emails, browsing, watching YouTube, and I squeezed in a few hours of Moonlight streaming there as well. I might have been running a heavier workload than what ASUS did to get their 18 plus hours, but still, almost 13 hours of screen on time is no joke. I've gone through work days without ever plugging it in. And that hardy battery carries on over to gaming, as I was able to trudge through 4 hours and 11 minutes of Fallout 4 in high-performance gaming mode before the Vivobook S15 croaked. Now, that's a hardy battery, putting most of the laptops I've ever reviewed to absolute shame. This laptop refuses to die. If it tells you that it's only got 10% of battery remaining, that translates to like, oh, I can still run for like 2 more hours. It's pretty insane. As for thermals, we get a similar surprising story. On normal usage, I topped out at 52 degrees Celsius, and at heavy usage, 63 degrees Celsius. Do note that these readings are for the whole chip itself. I wasn't able to find a way to measure temps of the CPU and the GPU separately, but as we can see, the Snapdragon X Elite either doesn't have enough power to heat up as much, or the ASUS Ice Cool fans are doing a great job. I mean, listen to the fan noise test here. Yeah, that's not your speakers or headphones going silent. Fan noise on this laptop is practically silent, even at performance mode. That might just be the sole reason that you are watching this video and considering getting this laptop. It's the hardiest, most enduring laptop that has been on my docket so far. It is slightly frustrating because it just refuses to die. And in the times that I had to inevitably plug it in to charge, it just pops straight back up with a ton of battery almost immediately. It just won't die. So, after all that, what do we think about the ASUS Vivobook S15? I think it's a solidly built and great performing laptop for the price. But like the recent Thunderbolts trailer, that recommendation comes with a very big asterisk at the end. Take a good hard look at your software usage and their platform compatibilities first. If your daily requirements are working with native x86 programs like a majority of the Adobe Creative Suite, or audio recording programs, you're better served getting an actual x86 laptop. But if you're a student who does most of their work on Microsoft Office or Google Docs and need to light gaming, this might just be the offering that you'll get the most mileage out of. It's easy to carry around, it's easy to maintain, it's fast where it counts, it just refuses to die, and it costs just this much. You don't even have to be a heavy user of AI, as the benefits in every other aspect far outweigh the reason of getting this laptop just for AI. But as for me and my use cases, for creatives, especially the ones using Adobe out there, it's a big pass. But students and young professionals, especially the ones who want to take advantage of AI computing, this is a very strong contender for your next device. So that's the ASUS Vivobook S15. Do you have any questions about it? Leave them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. While you're there, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps out a lot. That's it. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.